Okay, we want to focus our attention now on Alberta. The Conservatives have maintained their strong support in Alberta, but there are some ridings that could be a pretty tight contest, if you believe the polls. To discuss more of that, we're joined by Rob Breakenridge. He's a Calgary Herald columnist and joining us today from Calgary. Rob, good to talk to you.
Hi, Sarah.
So Alberta is, it's conservative for as long as I can remember. I lived there and I know just how conservative it is. That doesn't appear to be changing, but we're starting to hear about these Liberal gains in strength. Why do you think that is?
Well, a few things. Certainly the Liberals, I think, bottomed out here and in much of the country, arguably under Justin Trudeau. But, it was pretty stark here. The Liberals late last year were down as low as the low teens or even close to 10% support. And we've seen that rise. Some of the polls I've seen put that at maybe even closer to 30% or in the upper 20s. So it's a doubling, maybe even a tripling of Liberal support, I think, just by replacing a very unpopular leader. The fact that Mark Carney has some roots in Alberta probably doesn't hurt either. So but that rise hasn't really come at the expense of the Conservatives, right? The Conservatives have more or less maintained their level of support. So does it mean that some of these races are just closer, or is that Liberal support concentrated enough that they can pick up some seats, and can they overcome some residual NDP strength here?
Right. So it's not, in Alberta at least, it's not that Conservative voters are saying, hey, I'm not going to vote Conservative, which I can't imagine from the Conservative voters in Alberta that I know. But rather it's those who would potentially have been voting for another party now deciding that they would choose the Liberals, do you think?
Yeah. Look, at some parts of Alberta, these are the safest Conservative seats in the country. But some parts of Calgary and certainly in Edmonton, it's much more competitive. Now, Edmonton's an interesting dynamic. There's a new Democrat MP in Edmonton. The NDP has deeper roots in Edmonton. And of course, there's the provincial NDP, which is now more or less the de facto big tent progressive party in Alberta. And you're seeing a bit of a split where some provincial New Democrats are sticking with their federal cousins. Others are supporting the federal Liberals. So there's a bit of a divide in that sense. And, that could potentially bode well for the Conservatives in splitting some of the vote in these more hotly contested ridings. But, some of the projections so far we've seen suggest that the Liberals could pick up some seats. They won 2 in the last election, maybe 5, maybe 7 potentially up for grabs, which would look, they haven't done that well here in a very long time.
What do you think are the issues for Albertans? Are they the exact same, or I suspect there's some big differences in terms of what the average Albertan might be voting on?
Well, certainly, yeah. Look, and some of this was front and center in the debate last night, the conversation around economic development, specifically around energy, a willingness to build pipelines, build that energy infrastructure. I think even more broadly speaking, just maybe a sense that we need a federal government that at least more willing to listen to Albertans' concerns. For example, the net zero electricity grid regulations, there's a real concern here that could really negatively impact Alberta, come at a considerable cost to our province, and maybe our concerns have fallen on deaf ears previously. So is Mark Carney different enough than Justin Trudeau that maybe we'll get a different approach on some of those issues, or at least more of a willingness to hear Alberta's concerns, to compromise in some of these areas? So I think those are the issues that have been at the forefront.
Rob, I know how long you've been covering politics, particularly in Alberta, and I know, past elections, provincially at least in Alberta, polls have not always proved to be true. You see these polls, but you also see, massive crowds on the ground for the Conservatives, for the Liberals as well. What's your gut tell you about what these polls are saying?
Look, these are the same polling companies that were showing a massive Conservative lead last year. So they haven't changed their methodology or how they go about things. There's been a shift. Justin Trudeau leaving was huge, and obviously everything Donald Trump is doing has been huge. So things have shifted. But look, it's still a close race. I don't think this is over by any stretch. And from the Conservatives' perspective, Stephen Harper won a majority in 2011 with just under 40% of the vote. The Conservatives aren't really far off from that. It's just this has almost shifted into kind of a two-party race where that might not be enough. So I know it's frustrating for Conservatives who must have felt like they were headed toward an easy and a massive victory, and things have changed. And they've got now just over a week left to try to figure out how to get over that last little bit back into a position where maybe they can win this thing.
Yeah, can't let you leave without asking you about the debate. And to your point, is there something that could happen in the next 10 days? Did the debate do that to any degree, do you think?
It doesn't seem like it. I mean, I think it's fair to say maybe Pierre Poilievre had the best debate just from start to finish, but I don't know if it's moving the needle much, at least based on some of the early polling we're seeing. And it's unfortunate that it's the only debate we're going to see. And I think it is also unfortunate maybe the Leaders Debate Commission kind of became the story more than the debate itself, and how they mishandled a number of issues and the fiasco we saw after the debate last night. So that was unfortunate. But no, I think it was good to see the leaders on stage. Like I said, just wish we'd had an opportunity to see more of these.
Calgary Herald columnist Rob Breakenridge joining us from Calgary. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.